Hello, and thanks for using TickBoom, a free service that helps high school students with their math problems. In this video, I'm looking at this worked example 3, which says that a student claims that if an integer n is divisible by both 4 and 6, then the number is divisible by 4 times 6 equals 24. So that's the claim. Part A says disprove this claim by finding a counterexample. And then part B says to explain what's gone wrong and determine the correct conclusion. So part A, ultimately we just have to find one example where this claim isn't true, because all you need is one example to disprove something. Disproving is often easier than proving in a way. And then part B, we just need to say, well, what should they have claimed? Instead of making this claim that we're going to show is false, what would the claim had to have been as to not be false? So to start, I'll just write out the claim so we can refer to it. So the claim is that if n is divisible by 4, so I'll use this notation, n is divisible by 4, and n is divisible by 6, if those two things are true, then the claim is that n is also divisible by 4 times 6, or 24. So part A wants us to disprove it, and particularly by using a counterexample. And then part B is to, say what's the correct claim, essentially. What went wrong here and what would the correct claim have been. So I think, the student who sent this through, they kind of understood the basic answer, but what they weren't sure is how you would lay it all out in terms of the mathematical notation. Now, to be honest, I wasn't quite sure either if there was certain kind of technical notation that you have to use to lay out something like this. Out of curiosity, I did a bit of searching, but I don't think there is any formal way you would have to write this out to approach it correctly. I think the key is really just thinking about what is the least common multiple of these two divisors, and it's through that method that you end up getting to the right place. So I'll kind of just do the old school way of finding the least common multiple. So we'll look at all the multiples first of 4. So what are the multiples of 4? Well, we've got 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28, 32, 36, and I'll stop there. Now, if we do the same thing with 6, you get 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, 36, and that's probably enough. And then if we start by looking at what are all the common multiples, so we see we've got 12 is a common multiple, 24 is a common multiple, 36 is a common multiple, and there'd be plenty more. Now, what the person who made this claim has done is they have basically picked a multiple, in this case 24, 4 times 6 is 24, and they've said if it's divisible by each of these numbers, it must be divisible by this multiple. But the actual rule is if it's divisible by two numbers, then it must also be divisible by its least common multiple. And in finding that correct answer, we've also kind of at the same time found our counterexample, because if we think about part A, counterexample, 12 is divisible by 4 and 6, but not 24. So that's a counterexample. It's the only one we need. As long as you've got one counterexample, you've disproven a claim. And part B, really what the claim should have been was if n is divisible by 4 and n is divisible by 6, then n is also divisible by the least common multiple of 4 and 6, which in this case is 12. So I think that's basically how to think about that question. I mean, I don't have any fancy notation. Maybe you might think, you know, there should be some set notation in here or something like that. But at the end of the day, I think the crux of this question is about understanding this result, that you're looking for the least common multiple, not any common multiple. And I guess in terms of part A, we're kind of dealing with a certain style of proof, which is proof, not really proof by contradiction, it's almost disproof by counterexample. It's exactly what it says. You know, if someone makes a claim, all you need to do is find one example that that the claim doesn't work for, and then you've disproved the whole claim. So that's kind of what we've done here. Hopefully that all made sense. If you found that explanation helpful, please be sure to give it a like. And if you're someone who wants to keep their finger on the pulse with the kinds of questions other students are struggling with, be sure to subscribe to my channel so that you can stay in the loop. Alright, tick boom.